Hola, audiencia, y bienvenidos a Hoy Dimelo Cinema Club. I'm Jason Eccles. Tonight we will be reviewing Raise the Red Lantern. I am joined by our very distinguished, illustrious panel of hosts, Chris, Raymond, JP, Michaela, and Steve. So, guys, let's get into this thing. I chose The Red Lantern. This is the first film I've chosen to watch on Cinema Club that I've actually already seen before. As you know, I have a rule against that. And I'm sure that rule is going to go back into effect after this one. But I really want to share this film with you guys because I've seen it years ago, probably about 12, maybe 13 years ago. Someone recommended it to me. I was talking about international cinema, and they're like, "Have you ever seen this?" And I'm like, "No, I never heard of it." Like, well, you have to see it. And I saw it, and I love it. I absolutely love this movie for a lot of reasons, man. Like, I just, if I may, I'll just go into my first impression, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
So my first impression of this film, or my second impression of this film, I actually had the same reaction to it the first time I watched it, which is rare. I think maybe this time I had one extra reaction, but it's the same. I thought about China more as a I thought about China more as a I guess when I watch films now, I have this other thing that's going on in my head, like, well, what's going on locally, like for the film that's being made, like what's going on in the country, and what's being said by an artist like this. The guy who directed it also directed House of Flying Daggers and a bunch of movies along that ilk. He's got a list, man. He's a really big director. I'm not even going to say his name because I don't want to butcher it, and I didn't memorize it. So, God bless us. Uh, this movie has a lot going on, man. There's a lot of subtext. There's a lot of interesting symbols. There's very bold use of the color red, which is rare in films. And this one is like, I mean, red's in the title, and it's also part of his Red trilogy, from what I understand. I don't know if I've seen any of his other Red movies from the Red trilogy. But this movie talks a lot about hierarchy. It talks a lot about uh, gender roles. It talks a lot about societal pressures, caste systems. There's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, man. I found it very interesting that you know I hadn't realized this the first time, but this movie is like every prison movie that I've ever seen. You know what I mean? It is a different type of prison movie, but it's very much a prison movie. Uh, the performances I thought were great. The simple use of like the camera movements, everything is framed so beautifully. Cinematography so beautiful. Uh, Costumes wonderful. That they really, you know who these characters are from what they're wearing. And there's not a whole lot of characters in this movie, but it's small and it's intricate, like a little play, and there's a lot going on. So let's get into some of you guys' first thoughts. Who wants to lead us off? I'm not going to pick anyone. You guys pick yourself. Whoever talks first gets the job.
I,
It, 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 uh,
it's
I'll go first.
I,
I appreciate Jason on allowing me to watch this incredible rendition of the Real Sister Wives of Communist China Concentration Camp edition.
oh my god.
Uh, yeah, I'm like, this is where all the Mormons got the idea, of just do this situation. No, I'm completely joking, guys. But that's how I felt at the second half of this movie. Because at first, I'm not gonna lie, when I started watching the movie, I was very distracted. I was on a phone call and I was doing stuff on my computer. So I was like listening to the language, but not really reading the captions. So I didn't know what was going on. But also, in like the first, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, there was no dialogue whatsoever. It was like a lot of movement. So yeah. But then afterwards, when I caught on, I was like, oh, this is what's going on here. Okay, interesting. This is a very interesting game that they put here to play and stuff. And yeah, it totally felt like a prison and stuff. The ending, I gotta say, I actually enjoyed the ending. Uh, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself for saying that, but it wasn't what I was expecting. Let's just say that. And those are my first impressions.
Right?
Very nice.
Feel free to jump in. Next person.
I'm glad you compare this to a prison movie because I didn't think about that until now. And now that you said it, it's definitely like that. It's definitely. What is that noise? You guys hear that?
Yeah, I got it. It's Chris's mic.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Are you
But
sure? Sorry.
Yes.
sorry. Now I'm just apologizing. I derailed this review, this conversation. I apologize for that. I'm still derailing it right now.
Yes, you are.
We
Anyways,
gotta put it back on track.
it was like a prison movie.
Yeah, it was like a prison movie, and I didn't think about that until now, which is so silly of me because it's like no fucking duh. It's definitely kind of like I get some Shawshank vibes, some like Escape from Alcatraz vibes. Can you imagine if like Clint Eastwood was like that? It's like I'm gonna make the mastermind, because he's Clint Eastwood. I'm dumb.
Talk about interesting dynamic.
Right. Oh, but like it's weird because like I also agree with Dez. I definitely this subverted a lot of my expectations in this film. There's a lot of moments where I thought the film was gonna take, kind of like the traditional route, like oh, there might be a love triangle or whatnot, or like oh, there might be like she's gonna fight the system and whatnot, but that doesn't happen. Like those scenes are not in this film, and it's weird because like I'll admit the movie, it's a good movie. I could see, I'll admit it. This is one of those films where like I can see how this most likely was like great and like acclaimed, probably won all the awards and they deserve those awards. But I don't know why. But I'm probably just a dumb. I'm a dumb, not smart enough for this Chinese movie set in like it's not that long ago if they have fucking records, right?
I'm betting 40s because he was wearing a fedora.
He was?
Yeah.
It says it on the poster.
Really? When did this take place?
Hold on.
Yeah, I figured it was like the 1930s, personally. Oh.
30s, 40s, yeah.
So it's 1920s. I did end up looking it up.
That makes sense.
Which is crazy because like even then it's like that's not that long ago. That's oh my gosh. Like that blows my mind because it definitely felt like okay, this is not the modern day, but this is close enough where it's like this shouldn't be a thing anymore, if it is, and like that's crazy. But I like the little world that it's set up in. It didn't have to explain too much, like oh, like it's the modern day, trains exist, computers or whatever exists. No, it's just this weird palace and whatnot, and just like all the weird shit within those walls. It was a good movie, but I don't know if I was like, wow, that's my first thoughts.
I am obsessed. Thank you for picking this movie. So happy that I was introduced to it. It felt like a director's fever dream, like a movie that I might have watched at AFI if maybe I went the year previous or the year after and they decided to switch out the films that they showed for a class there. It was like so subjective through the main character, where it's like I believe we don't see the master until much later, even though he's in scenes with the fourth sister, and just like little kind of decisions like that just really brought me into the story. The sound design was beautiful, the cinematography was gorgeous. From the moment when it opens up, kind of in the reds in the new home that she's entering, I was like, oh my gosh, we're probably gonna end with reds. It's gonna be like so gorgeous, and even though I see it coming, it's gonna like totally sweep me under. And then the other thing I thought of was when she articulates that she's just so upset at the system, per the commentary we've said about like prisons and whatnot. I was like, oh, but she's gonna still find herself as a pawn in it and lose her mind within it. So it's just like I saw everything that was coming, and yet still it like kept hold. And yeah, I think it's a little long and it felt a little episodic at times. But aside from that, I loved it.
I definitely want to talk about the episodic feeling, right? So I want to put a point on it.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yes, I'll go. I really liked it. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous film. I thought the dynamics were interesting. The world is really set up. It's smart writing. But I will admit that I feel like I missed a trick here. So it's like one of those films where like I feel like once you know it's there, you're gonna end up going back again and again to just like catch new things, and that's what makes it exciting. So that's my first impression.
I remember Tiananmen Square like as a kid. I'm 43. So I was like 10 or 11 years old. I remember my dad talking to me about it. It was like a college, mostly like a college movement at first, right? That was like something that was happening on television. And the movie was banned in China for like 3 years after that. I didn't know that. I just saw that recently. Completely makes sense why. They were basically going for democracy at the time. So going into it, when I looked at what the movie was going to be when it was released and all, it definitely hit me, and it made complete sense why it was released the way it was. I thought this movie was amazing. I loved all the visuals. I love the plot. I love every single part. I didn't feel like it was too slow. I felt like they really, like, when you think about the whole movie is contained in that one area. It is like a prison. And the fact that they didn't show the master was huge. I almost think they shouldn't have. And I also think this movie would have been a good silent movie. I feel like it could have been an old time silent movie. I feel like it would have been pulled off well. I felt like the subtitles, unfortunately, were very small on my screen, so I was struggling often to try and read them, but I didn't feel like I had to all that much. But again, like, to me, the biggest thing for me was the time period. Like, China was going through a huge change at that time. Like, they were finally becoming a country where they were supporting people going to college in a way that they were going to, try and like export technology, people that were in technology. And so it makes complete sense that they would bar this, because the generation before that were people that like lived as peasants. And so it didn't look so, they were very big on not publicly ridiculing systems and things like that at the time. Like right before that was like the Kuwait, right around that time is like the Kuwait War and all. And right after that, they didn't publicly go after a lot of countries at that time. So for me personally, I definitely remember my dad talking to me a lot as a child when it came to a lot of the political things that were going on in China, and also like the Gulf War. So for me, though, it was a beautiful movie and completely made sense why it was banned for a couple of years at first in China.
Awesome. Thanks for mentioning that, Chris. I wanted to get to the ban, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that's important information to know about the historic relevance of this film. That China was going through a phase, change of the guard, sorta, and things happened, and this movie was on the banned list for a little bit. That's cool. Did everybody do their first impression?
I think so.
Yes. Cool. So let's just jump right back into something that Raymond talked about. We'll talk about the episodic nature of this film. This thing does it's divided into parts, right? It's divided into like the seasons and whatnot to give you like this a lapse of time that things have happened. And it does feel like an episode, doesn't it? Or a few episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, consuming so much like US based films, you kind of just go, well, we know things are going to escalate. Well, we know there's going to be fun and games. Things are going to take a turn. Things get real serious. Main character is going to pick up their stuff and get it all done. Something bad happens, climax, the end. And it was just like, it just kept kind of ebbing and flowing. What was neat about it was like, I never knew when the big thing was coming, but then after like the third or fourth time, I was also like, is there a big thing coming? Is it ever coming? Um, so it was neat. It kept me on my toes. And it is based off of a source material, which I'm assuming a lot of the film really stays true to. But yeah, it was episodic sometimes, and it did feel like, oh, okay, like, in the landscape of film and television now, I'm sure they'll inevitably reboot this and turn it into a TV show, which it seems much more a fit for.
That's really interesting. I would have never considered that, but in this day and age of media, for sure, this thing could be a streaming series or something. You're right, man. Like there's a lot that you could do with this type of subject, with these characters in this situation.
Especially since I feel like there's kind of like a wave of Korean, Chinese, and Japanese film that's just been like relentless the last 3 years. Like they have been on their game, and there's like even more stuff coming. Like there's like a couple shows on Netflix that I'm like so excited about from Korea. Like it's exciting to be like to kind of get a glimpse into the history of it.
Can we do a Dino sidebar real quick? Has anyone seen The Silent Sea? It's a Korean TV series on Netflix.
No,
Sci-fi, so amazing, beautiful, another director fever dream. Worth just tossing it out there. We can talk about it later. Okay, bye.
Okay.
I know what you mean by like a director's fever dream, because it does very much feel like the director lived in this space. Like before he made the movie, while he was making the movie, and definitely after he made the movie. You know what I mean? Because this movie was so highly lauded, and then the government got involved. So it felt like this thing was just going to be a huge part of his life forever.
Yeah.
On the episodic stuff, to me, like like at one point I remember literally either saying this out loud to myself or just thinking about it, but I'm like, this feels like a Chinese telenovela at one point. Like I was like, because all the sisters gossiping and all this stuff, they're trying to one up each other. That one got mad because she wants to get her feet rubbed and stuff like that. The moment it started looking cinematic to me was definitely one shot that I really enjoy was the one that she walks into the young master, I think it is, playing the flute or one instrument. I absolutely, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I love the scene that they're playing the game. What's that? Yeah, that game. And the sister's rubbing the feet of the doctor, and that's what she knows. And definitely when the curses or the deaths started happening, that's when it was feeling more of a film to me. And the other parts were more like episodic.
Yeah, the movie really picks up steam in like the second act.
Can I ask a question? Oh, well, there's one. But the second one is, am I reading too into the young master and the fourth sister?
No,
I think that's part of the foreshadowing of like the whole thing is like this whole idea of like where this man gets to have as many of these wives as he wants. The women aren't ever allowed that freedom, and that's why the third sister dies instead of the fourth sister, and that's part of why she goes crazy, is because she was just, all it would have taken is the wrong person seeing that, intuiting that, and saying, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z flirted with your son. What are you going to do about it? Right. Like, I think that's all part of the dangerous tension of being a woman in this world is, like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
That's interesting. That's one of the themes that I enjoy most about this movie is that this movie very much is about rebellion, and it's like women rebellion with a cause. You know what I mean?
Well, I just wanted to say it's like very interesting that you guys saw it as a prison movie, and I saw it as like one of those Puritan like movies, like when Girls in Salem, kind of like in a religious cult kind of movie.
Oh, sure.
You know, that's how I felt about watching this. It's like it reminds me of a lot of those, like The Witch, or like anytime something's in pre-colonial America, where like the whole premise is that it's these churchy colonies, and the women are just trying to like live their lives. God forbid.
What's the name of the movie where they're all, or the TV show where they're all wearing red nun?
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, that it definitely reminded me of that as well. In certain ways, I think for me, a lot of it was that that they were like contained in one area, but they had all this power, like in their little tiny area, and like so they felt like they were strong and at the very beginning, but then from that point on, they weren't. And like the one thing, dude, who like was in control of all this fire going on all over the place? Like I was worried for everyone the whole time. There's fire going on all over the place the entire time. So many things that are flammable. I was like, this place is going to burn down. Especially when you got to like the concubine or the servants' quarters, and like she had like taped lancers and things like that. I personally thought that the whole scene was going to be that the master was sleeping with that servant. I think we can delve into that later on, because I personally think she was in the same way that the fourth sister was a servant by the end.
I think that he was sleeping with the servant.
You think he was?
Yeah, absolutely. He was messing around with the servant, and I think it's she kind of like illustrates like this thing of control. Everybody wanted to control somebody else in the thing, and the fourth sister, she like she emphasized her control over this servant. You know what I mean? Nobody else really treated their servants like that. They had a whole like back and forth relationship because she knew the servant was sleeping with. She sensed it. She could feel it. And I think she was correct. And I think even the older head servant lady, she was like, "Don't be mad that the servant didn't marry you. Like he was never going to marry you."
Mm-hmm.
So like it lets you know that she had a crush on him because something happened at some point. It's like he's not going to marry her though.
Yeah, no, like there's like a whole scene where she literally catches him with her, with the and like I also think that they kind of hinted that she was pregnant. Because like there's this one shot where they focus on her belly, which is a little bit chubby, like during the winter thing, all while during the fake pregnancy. Because like I thought that was the game that they were trying to play, but
I find it very interesting how the sister wives and the concubine. For me, the most interesting part of the relationships in the movie is how manipulative and catty and controlling they are of one another. You know what I mean? Like I knew right away the first time I saw this when they were talking about like the tradition of whoever gets the red lantern the night before had their choice of the menu the next day. I knew right away that was going to come into play. I felt it. And when she says I don't eat meat, I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have said that. They're gonna make sure you get meat all day. You know what I mean? Now seeing the movie a second time, I know that they were gonna totally abuse it. But at some point, I knew they were gonna come back and abuse her with the menu for sure. And I thought that was gonna always play like a part in it because who gets to choose the menu is a big part of like their power.
What I love about everything you mentioned on the writing front is that like the writer does such a fabulous job of giving you just the right amount of information to understand the context of where the character's at, and then just dropping little nuggets as you need them. And I just so like gifted, mature writing. I hope to one day be at that level.
I was thinking the same thing, Raymond.
100%. The crazy thing is it's an adaptation. It's a novel adaptation.
Oh wow.
Which, like like I that's why I was kind of impressed with the writing too, because like with a novel you have so much detail in explaining what's going on in everybody's heads that I think that's why we see a lot of really bad adaptations of novels is like they instead of just like trusting that the story is enough, they're always like, well, we need to give more context. But it's like, actually, you don't.
This was a pretty quiet film, wasn't it?
It was.
There wasn't a ton of dialogue, but all of it was really important. It all like kind of pushed the story forward, like remarkably. And I kept thinking, like, the writing of this script, there's so many like thematic things in it, and there's so much happening. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to write on this level. It's like I don't like. Maybe I got to go to writer's camp or something. It was so well scripted.
A writer's
Take me
camp,
with you.
4 different houses, a big palace, and every time there's a head writer to go like these
That's a
lamps.
good skit.
And the lanterns, not red, green. They've been greenlit.
Greenlit.
Pretty greenlit. Green,
That's so good. That's so good.
So check this out. There's something like I feel like we need to give props to like everybody who had a hand in this movie because there's a lot of like little nuanced things all the way around. I want to talk about something that we don't always talk about on this program: set design. Set design is pretty brilliant in this thing, I think. Even in its simplicity, I think that kind of speaks a lot to like Chinese tradition and culture. But let's talk about the estate, the villa that they're all living in a little bit. I found out that the original construction of that place took place in like 1750-ish, right? And it's like it's an old family place that's been passed down from generation to generation as they do. And now it's a museum. Like you can visit it because the movie had such an impact on the country that it's a standing museum now. But there's also something like kind of cold and dark and fabulous
Absolutely.
about it. It feels like a castle, and it feels very old, even though it's not really that old. It feels like it's from centuries ago.
Yeah, the best shots were on the roof with all those tiles, like just the way it looked, and like when they showed the little towers and things like that. I think obviously the red pops were huge, but anything that wasn't red, man, made it so cold. I felt every season it felt cold, like the whole
That
thing.
first establishing shot.
Absolutely,
That's like
and it completely mirrors the mood at the time.
that first establishing shot. That's like in the dusk, like just as the sun is setting, and then the lanterns are up. I'm like, oh my God, that's beautiful. It looks like a background poster or something that could be. It's. I would love to just have that image like hanging on my wall. You know what I mean? It's incredible.
Yeah.
As the film was going to, I feel like we had like a 3-4 years of those like sardonic like royal drama comedy things for Oscar films or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Do you mean like Sense and Sensibility or something?
Yeah, yeah. What was the one too with I'm just blanking out on everything.
Spencer or whatever.
It's
Dangerous
3 women.
Liaisons was around.
There's a queen who we then find out is like bisexual or lesbian in a love triangle between the 3 women.
Oh, The Favorite.
The Favorite.
That's it.
Oh my god. So I just feel like there's been a lot of like movies that have kind of I'm really blanking out on words. Recontextualized monarchical relationships in a humorous way, and in a way that like I don't think this film intended to be like comedic by any means, but there is like in moments of the film like a very like dark humor or not quite satirical but like pointed kind of tone to it that it did feel kind of like a precursor of where I think where we are now with movies that try to do the same thing. that may be a little louder and a little bit more willing to be humorous than maybe this film is. But it just felt it felt like a ancestor to
Yeah, no,
the
it's
favorite.
definitely a precursor to like a certain kind of dynamic that like I think we like to explore nowadays, especially since it's like the whole story is about the interexchanging of power in powerless situations, you know, because these are all wealthy women, but like they don't actually have any say in their own lives, and so they spend all of their time trying to be like the most important person in this man's life because there are real world consequences to failing in this.
Right.
You know? And I think that like it's a statement that it kind of it's a world that we see because we all want to be part of this monarch, like these royal wealthy situations, but also like you see that it's not as great there as like there's still that power dynamic that like everyone seems to have to struggle with no matter where you're at.
I think it's one of the most interesting parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, I feel like films like stories like this often do this, but you know, what made me reference it as a prison movie is that, you know, these women are kind of confined to this situation, chained to this situation, and just like in any, you know, situation where people are, you know, put in a unit that they can't escape, there becomes like a hierarchy in that unit, and they're all searching for that control of like their. I mean, really, it's about control of their own autonomy at the end of the day, right? And by doing that, you also need to control other people's autonomy and what happens to them. It's cool. It's a lot of it seems like bizarre by today's standards because you start thinking like, oh, communist China and control, but it's really not that far off if we're being honest.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these threads, these ideas are still pretty relevant in today's America.
So can we talk about something real quick? Because I need a refresher. But I know the situation, which I mean they I guess touch about it in the movie, but they don't say it out loud. And that's the whole like you gotta have a boy.
Mm-hmm. It's about having
Yeah,
a male heir to continue the name because that's what the whole idea of patriarchy is set upon, is the idea of the heir so that you can maintain wealth along family lines without having to disperse it. And that's why having like multiple male heirs, you can diversify that. That's essentially diversifying your portfolio. And with when you have a girl, girls are supposed to be only used as bargaining chips, essentially. Like if you want to go completely economic with it, like they're only good for establishing new family ties. And so that's
And children.
Yeah, exactly. More heirs.
More heirs.
I felt like she was trying to use as if she was pregnant as a way to try and get pregnant. Like she didn't
100%.
have any power, right? So I felt like she was like, I'm pregnant, and she was like, if I keep sleeping with him, I'm gonna get pregnant, right? And I think
that was the whole
and the woman who could have a girl, at least she's showing she's fertile, right? So like once you got to a certain age, then like your use was like, so the one thing that was really sad in the movie is like he never spent any time with the first mistress. There was never a red light for her, right? So she was obviously older, and like there was not like a night. They never had ever referenced her getting any love anymore in any way, shape, or form. And she had been there all that time. They had like a 22-year or 25-year-old kid. So that was huge too. Like it definitely was, you know, that whole concept was huge and definitely pushed women off as they got older.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the patriarchy of it, I feel like that's expressed pretty clear, at least to me, by them never showing the master's face really, right? Like they never show it clearly. They always show it like at a distance, or like his face is half in the pillow. We never really get to see his expressions in the film. We never know how he feels by like just the look on his face, like we do everybody else, where everybody else kind of almost exists in extreme close-ups, almost, right? Or at least close-ups.
Mhm.
And I think that's to like show the patriarchy. Like this could be anybody, and it doesn't really matter who he is. He is the patriarchy.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And that's part of why it's like such smart writing. The fact that like smart direction too. Because like it really does make you feel the omnipresence of this condition of like what makes the film so tense is because like no matter where this man's at, he's always there and you always want his affections. You always want to be in his good graces, or else how are you contributing? Like every time he finds a new woman, like they've all failed, and it's very clear that that's how they all feel about it.
That's interesting. I was also trying to think of like the tactic of the foot massage, and him using that against them. I was thinking about that like partway through the.
I'm not gonna lie. When I saw the maracas, I kind of by the 7th time the movie showed the maracas, I wanted some maracas on my feet.
You wanted some maracas on your feet?
Yeah, man, made a cool sound.
Listen, I thought the usage of that, like, I'm not really 100% sure. I know there's a symbol in there. I wasn't 100% sure what it was, but it's a great symbol. I would just like to hear somebody explain it to me. But what I really liked, and Michaela mentioned earlier, was the sound design. That those maracas, or whatever we want to call them, the foot massage maracas, it was incredible. It let you know what was happening in the story without ever having to mention it. And just like hearing it and seeing the reaction on people's faces, like knowing that like she's the queen for the night or whatever, she's the queen for the day. And it just meant so much. And I love how Gong Li, the actress who played the lead, the fourth wife, I love how she responds to everything so quietly. It's written all over her face. Even when it seems like she's expressionless, you can see it in her eyes. Her acting, let me just say this. We're not talking about people's acting yet, but let me just get it out. I think her acting is flawless in this film.
I
I think
mean, yes.
I think it's one of the greatest performances ever committed to celluloid, and I'm not even kidding right now. I don't know if I felt like that the first time I saw it, but something drew me back to this movie, and I think it's her. She's so wildly good in this film. There's not an
She's
off moment.
she's so good. She's so great. So is I. Well, honestly, like everyone was pretty top notch, but the first and second, or sorry, the fourth and third wives, like it's
They
just
carried the whole thing.
beyond. Yeah, it's just wild. It's just and it is to where like how you're saying how quiet the fourth sister is, in the same way that the third sister, you get immediately her vibe, her essence, that whenever we go back to her, I felt the same way. I felt like no matter what expression she's giving me or what's going, like I know exactly where her mindset is at too.
Yeah.
In a way that was just like this is so skillful. This is incredible.
Well,
No,
listen, I feel like, especially with the third sister, the source material is so strong and the writing is so strong for her. It's almost the easiest role to play. And I mean, she knocks it out of the park, obviously, with just a look sometimes. Like, what she's thinking and what she's about. I feel like the fourth sisters, I feel like, I mean, she's the lead, but I feel like she has the heaviest load to lift because she has to express so much so quietly, and you always have to know sort of like what her internal life is. Not easy to pull off.
Mm.
I will say too, the one time, since we're praising the hell out of this film anyway, and
Okay.
we've mentioned a few things. I did feel, and I don't hate it, but I did. It was here's what it was. It was the few times where I was taken out of the experience of the film outside of the episodic storytelling, but was when we like did stay on her for so long. She's doing great performance wise. I never have any problem with that. But direction wise, I did just go like, this feels something about this that felt like a male choice. I don't know.
Hmm.
It felt something inherently felt like I don't.
No, I
What
think
is
I
your
get what you're saying is because like they're both different types of pretty. You know, like the fourth mistress is like a very natural beauty. You know, she doesn't wear a lot of makeup, like, but yet she's very ostentatious in her clothing choices. Whereas the third mistress, she's a classic beauty. You know, with like the makeup. You know, and you can just see how like almost doll-like they're presented at times.
yeah.
Yeah, the film opens up with her talking to her mother, fourth sister talking to her mother before she gets married, and there was something about that like going into it, I was like, all right, like I get what they're doing as a director. They're really trying to set like the mood, the tone, the language for this film by like doing this long shot, and it's just on our main actor, and I was like, I'm kind of here for it. And then like the first tear starts rolling eventually, and like the dialogue's done, and then I was just like, there's something here which I think kind of works. Like you could argue this is why the film is great, but I think you can also make an argument of like, okay, it's like not, I don't know. It's like watching it. It felt here. Okay, I'm not gonna articulate every single thought I have in my mind because they're all going 101 different directions. But what I will say is,
No, like that's interesting because like I feel like my experience was like I thought it was like a beautiful film, but I just didn't connect to it on a very deep level, and I couldn't figure out why because the fourth mistress's character, I can't stand her. You know, like there's like a sense of morality that she's supposed to have in this that I just don't ever see her having, and I think what you're trying to get at is the fact that all of her reactions are how a man would want the woman to react in this situation.
oh my god, okay, that's what I was getting at. Okay, so yes, that
Because
opening, particularly that that opening shot, where I was like, I'm really, I'm cis male, whatever. But like, I'm trying to like channel, like, like I am this fourth sister and I'm like watching this movie and like, if I'm this jaded and like, just like, fuck this system, and yet then ending this conversation being like, well, mom, like no matter what I do, like this is the end of the road looks the same, and this is the end of the road, and I'm not like like I'm like done, like let's go, let's get this show moving, like what's the next steps. And it felt like in that moment of like lingering on her and then like having the actors cry the one tear and then waiting till the second tear falls, I was just like, there's something distinctly like maleness in this direction that I didn't buy. I didn't feel that all the way through because I think it's subjective, and like I think she goes, okay, this is what you want me to do, I'm gonna like run with it and make everyone eat me up right now. But like but in that beginning I did go like, oh, okay, okay, I'm just gonna keep that little thing just like right here so that I can access that awareness.
it's because it's a it's an intuition. It's someone saying, "Oh, I totally get what this experience is, what it's like to be a woman," and it's just like, well, actually, in like a society like that, we already know. Like from the age, like when you grow up as a cis woman, by the time you are 8, you understand that you are expected to get married and have children. Like, and I don't think that the emotion that men expect to see the tragedy in that, like once they get that there's a tragedy in that, they expect us to be, and it's just like, no, like we've done cried over that.
So I would say that I agree with everything you guys just said. and it just made me think about something else. I'm like, where was I at when you know, like where was I at in the film when I started like having like that type of reaction? And I thought about the lead actress, and I didn't identify with her, or I didn't see the morality in her. And then I just remembered something. I remember thinking at the moment where she explains her past to the master, or I think no, to the second sister, where she's like, "Oh, you know, your father." She goes, "Yeah, my father passed," or whatever. She goes, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But what about your mother?" And she goes, "Oh, well, you know, it was my stepmother." And I'm like, "Oh, she's 19 years old, and like her father was the only family she had, really. You know, she clearly doesn't. She's not, you know, really connected to her stepmother. Her stepmother basically sold her off, right? Essentially, and she doesn't have anyone, and she's 19, so she's obviously very rebellious. She had to give up school. She didn't want to do that, you know, and so she's kind of thrust into the situation, and she's trying to make the best of it, and she's trying to reach and grab for something she can hold on to, whether it's power or whatever. At that point, I realized I didn't have to like her. I know
Yeah.
sometimes, like in movies, we want to find someone we can like, but I'm like, I don't think I'm like, it doesn't matter because that is what I sympathize with, just or not empathize with, right? I'm like,
So my
oh yeah,
mic,
she's kind of a tragic figure to start.
so my mic was cutting off before, but when I read up on the book, it's only like 100 pages. Apparently, it's really good reading. Like the setting is actually like much more flowery and like it's beautiful. In as far as like there's no vegetation in the movie that we see, but the backstory is that her father was a rich guy and lost all his money and committed suicide. And that's how she ended up, you know, she couldn't go to school anymore. So I was reading that earlier today. I couldn't say it earlier because my mic kept kicking out when you guys were talking, but that's crazy. It changes the whole concept of how she ended up here. You know, like it changes. So apparently the book is significantly has some significant differences.
It will also give more meaning to that scene of she trying to find her instrument.
Mhm.
Right, because it's the only thing she has left to connect to him, which I felt like that already. But if she just lost him in some kind of tragic way, then you're right, man. That to me would be even more meaningful. I don't know why they didn't go with that in that first scene, like that very first scene. That's probably a choice, right? Like that they didn't go with that as and it worked. It totally worked. But I don't know why they didn't go with all of that.
You know why I think they didn't go with it now that you mention it, because I didn't know at the time. I mean, this is new information to me. Maybe because like the underlying theme of suicide is pretty strong in this thing, right? Like you think like at any moment somebody's gonna kill themselves. You know, that's what I was thinking at least. Like I figured at some point in the movie that was going to happen, like pretty early on. So I think maybe like that would kind of like deaden that blow if they presented that very early, maybe.
Mhm.
Or deaden that idea. Or that anticipation, that what do you call it when you're watching something and like the tension, that tension.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from one of the first scenes, or not one of the first scenes, that first time we saw that the son, the 22-year-old, the guy with the flute, I 100% was like, she's ending up in that tower. Like she's gonna do something that's gonna put her in that tower. And I love the fact that they didn't do that. Like, because I feel like that's where they were leading our minds the whole time. That you know, the foreshadowing was that she was going to do something with this guy, and they never really got beyond the one flirtation. They never really went beyond that at all with him.
Do you think the husband thought that his son may have gave her the flute?
Yes. Or somebody.
Ooh,
Well, he said that he thought it was a boy at university gave it to her.
I mean,
now
in
I'm
the end,
thinking
maybe
like
he really did.
that would have been great.
you
Like-
think maybe the son really did give her the flute?
Maybe he did give her the flute, and she said it was her father. You know, and now that you're saying that, I never thought of that idea either.
I think she came with it in her suitcase.
Okay,
in the
so
beginning.
then it wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
That's true.
That was pretty bogus. That hurt my feelings a lot when he took her flute. That
He
bothered
burned
me. Yeah, I definitely had a reaction to that.
move.
I was just like, man, this fucking sucks.
Well, it's just like after because like I feel like that moment happens after she has like a moment where she has like a win, essentially, and so they have to remind us exactly what her situation is. You know, we can't think at any moment in time that she's actually going to end up having the kind of freedom that she clearly desires and needs in her life.
Because this ain't no Nicholas Sparks novel.
Wow, that's really good observation, Michaela. That is, again, that is good writing. I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah, and it also kind of erases a bit of her identity as well. Because I think that's like another big theme in this is little by little what makes her the girl she came in as is taken away as she's turned into the fourth mistress. Like how many times does she actually get called her name?
I'm almost surprised they used her name at all. I'm surprised they used anyone's name at all in the script. I was
didn't
thinking
think
that
they
as well
would.
about
You're right.
I'm surprised they
At
used
one point in the
anyone's
film, I was
names.
like, I don't think they used anyone's name.
Yeah.
When
But
they
then
started,
they
when they started
the
saying
first
the
one.
names, I was like, wait, what?
But also,
Except hers.
But also, how bizarre that like you walk around there and like everybody, even the strangers, are like, "What up, fourth mistress? What up, second mistress?"
I wonder what the connotation of that is in Chinese, though.
Times. So I think that's part of the power dynamic too. Is like who's the most personable with the master, because everyone's more comfortable using their name.
The master and young master.
And what was the ceremony to initiate their wedding? Like whatever their bond with him was, other than sexual, right? Was there a ceremony that we didn't see? Because like they didn't really have that, right?
Maybe the caravan in the beginning.
That's the other thing. Oh my god. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna cheer on the director again, but it was just like, well, or the writer, or both. But like what they choose to show. Wait, hold on, because like I need you to understand just like how many like I was just like obsessing. Like at the beginning, you see, oh, you know, they're putting the 10 red lanterns for you, and she's like, what does that mean? Great writing, we're about to find out. She's asking. It's very organic. They start putting it, and it's like, you know, first it's like very slow, one by one, and then much like any other film or TV now, like after they show you how the one goes, and they start making quicker cuts, and then you get like the red lantern ceremony. Then we know that she gets married, but they cut all the, for lack of a better word, romance out of the ceremony, and we just know that they're going to have sex on the night of their wedding. And then, but when the fifth sister comes, we actually, just like a second or two, get a glimpse of the ceremony that we never got to see with the fourth sister because it didn't matter to the story at the time. But we get to see it for the first time with the fifth sister. And then I'm watching it as a viewer going like, oh, this happened. But because it's such a subjective experience by the fourth sister and how she's living in this world, that wasn't important to her. And so I just thought like little decisions like that and then it, you know, adds in the sound design, because now we know that, you know, the maracas mean that someone's getting chosen, or that the singing is by the third sister, even though she's dead, that it's still haunting and we're still thinking of her. Just like all that stuff was really great. Okay, I'm done.
Yo, what about those big ass? I know they have a name. The mask that were on the walls.
Oh, the
Kabuki mask.
Kabuki, yeah, Kabuki theater.
Would it be Kabuki? Because it's in China.
Kabuki's Japanese.
Oh yeah,
right,
no, you're right. Good point. They were theater masks.
They look
definitely like opera masks. Because that's what she's an opera singer. But I don't know what the specific term is for
that was the only life in that film, were those individual rooms. Like that whole palace looked like just one tremor from just falling the fuck apart. I got that vibe.
Yeah. I think it's important, like that each lady sort of have her own personality in her room. I mean, you know, that kind of like tells the story for us a little bit.
Oh, so this is where Encanto got it from.
No, if anything, I think it's like it shows what like inner lives that they had to give up in a way.
Yeah.
You know, because every single thing that they had on their wall kind of like represented who they are, with like the third sisters being so vibrant and colorful, you know. And then like the third sisters, her room is really dark. Like y'all remember that?
Yep.
Because she has a heart of scorpions, so she lives under a rock.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How it's designed, you know.
Um,
Whereas, like, the fourth sister's walls are covered in paintings and calligraphy because she's educated.
right. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. One thing that I noticed, back to what Raymond was saying about her, the ceremony, is the fourth sister did, but I think she bypassed her ceremony because she didn't care. In the very beginning, that royal caravan is coming to scoop her up, and they're making this big fuss, and there's like an elephant or a camel or something that they're all, and there's a lot of red and stuff. And she looks at it going back to her house, and she goes, whatever. And she just walks with her suitcase up the road to the house. And when they ask her, well, why didn't you take the caravan? She goes, I walked.
I missed that.
Yeah, they called it a sedan. Like
A sedan. That's right. Yeah, that was a great name for it. I was like, yeah,
I'd never heard that
sedan.
before, but
Yeah, like what a cool name
I
for
forgot about that whole scene.
Wow.
Because like
it's really fast.
No, because like that's why she's a big threat. Is like the whole thing is like on top of everything else. There's like this whole element of like why ceremony is important and why the ceremonies in our everyday lives must not be challenged. And she challenges it from the get-go. And
Right,
every time they change, someone else is closer to that precipice, which is another one of the big themes in the movie.
Yep. And she couldn't have been any different from it. I mean, like we talked about costumes and set a little bit, but she shows up like very plain in her, student outfit. You know what I mean? And everything else is very different than her. And she like just sort of stands out as this, like a James Dean, really. You know what I mean? Like,
how about the ending where they have her walking around the entire credits too? That never stopped the entire credits. She was still wandering around the entire time. And I was like, are these credits like not being able to read Chinese? I was like, is this like explaining what happened at first I was like, are these words I need to know what they are? And then I realized they were credits pretty quickly. But she did wander around that whole thing that entire time after.
Absolutely. Okay, so one thing that we usually do here on Cinema Club, I don't want to leave it out this time because of who these characters are. What's a character that you guys liked or identified with in this thing?
I think my favorite character to watch this whole time was the third sister, the opera singer. Just because, like, there's a kindness in her cruelty that, like, I don't think the other people really managed to get, because she does everything she can to take care of herself, but also, like, I don't know, like, I think she was my favorite one to watch.
Cool.
I think for me, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I just felt generally sad about everything, because I was just thinking about my values and ideals and my hopeless romanticism. And I was wondering, like, correct me, because I've clearly missed some parts of the movie, but I felt like the second sister was genuinely in love with the master in a way maybe that the first one has accepted kind of the confines of the patriarchal system, and then the third one was like, I'm here for the doctor, and then the fourth one's like, screw this whole system. Which, by the way, having 4 distinct POVs per character is really also just really great. But yeah, I felt like the second one was like a hopeless romantic, so I think I'm zeroing in on her for that reason. But then she finds herself in this situation, so.
Well, no, like, that's what makes her so scary, is like she has that tenderness because she has that love, and that's why she's willing to do just about anything and tread on anybody.
An adorable, like, what's that? What was Kathy Bates' character in that one Stephen King movie?
Misery.
Kind of like that. Where it's like, you know, she's adorable, she's cute, but like, god damn, she will kill you. She'll kill you, your fucking babies.
Don't give her a sledgehammer.
There's no lanterns in my cock-a-doodie house.
You know,
Great.
I think that for me, the first sister, I think a big part with her was I had all these tropes built in my mind that were going to happen in the movie with her, and I feel like that those were very Americanized tropes. Like she was going to like scold everyone all the time, and she just kept that reserved role the whole entire time. You know, like she looked down on things, but you could see like judgment a little bit, but it was more like she didn't like try and grab everyone and say like, hey, I'm going to handle everything. And I think that's a very Americanized trope, you know, like that the older person is going to come in and be like, hey, this isn't how it is in a scenario like this. And I think she just showed more of like how people actually were, you know, like from that previous generation for me.
I had the same feeling.
That
I had the
like
same exact feeling.
we do when we do see her interacting with the master, she's always in the like the business room with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she is his companion, but they talk. That's what their relationship is now. She helps run his affairs.
Yeah,
it's more
for sure.
a professional thing, which is interesting.
Did anybody think it was interesting that the third sister was able to leave the compound to go to that hotel at some point?
Yes.
I was wondering how that happened because the master was the only person
that's
that left.
something that I wish they would have gotten into in the movie.
Like how she got out of there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's something that like that's part of the misunderstanding. Like they are technically the mistresses of these estates, so they do have the autonomy to go out and do things, but that's part of the risk is if you go out and do things, you're not happy in your home. And that's something that people will talk about, you know?
Yeah, that's why.
Like that's part of the dichotomy is like, yes, you can literally just walk out, but what's the cost? Your entire livelihood? Like your life? You know, like you know, that I think that's like that's what that's supposed to be.
Okay.
Is like, yeah, you can leave.
That makes sense.
But there's consequences.
Also, I think that it was maybe under the guise of her going to the hospital, and then they found that she was lying. But secondly, to what Michaela is saying, there was also that moment where the four sisters' maid gets sent to the hospital, and the master goes like, make sure she gets the best care. We don't want people to think that we don't. I forgot what English translation words he uses, but
kill the servant.
Yeah, we don't mistreat.
But it kind of goes into that same idea of like, if you step out, you're a reflection of the master, and so what does it mean to step out of the walls, and how does that relate to how the master is maintaining his home or not?
Did you guys notice how the third sister, we never saw her again once they started that process of she was gonna be taken away? Like they kept showing her feet flailing too, like, so that character, also she was wearing white. Like I felt like they took away her identity when she was going to be killed. You never saw her face again. You never saw like the colors she wore all the time. She always wore like deep red colors, and I thought that was huge too. Like her identity was immediately gone once that had happened.
Wow. That's cool.
No, I hadn't considered that. You're right, though.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, the character that I most identified with initially was the second sister, because I was like, oh, she's so nice and warm and welcoming, and everyone else is cold and they don't want her there. And then she switched that up real fast, and I was like, oh, you're the worst of all, you know?
Oh, yeah, no,
She's
I was like, I even told JP, I made a point to be like, she's gonna step.
It was a fucking Disney plot villain or twist villain.
See, you saw it coming. You must watch like a lot of Real Housewives or something, because I didn't see it coming.
No, I just read a lot of books, and like anytime someone in these kind of power dynamics is nice, you know they're poisoning someone.
Yeah, I did not see it either.
I don't know about y'all. I don't know about y'all, but whoever was playing the maracas, that was my person.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. All right. Well, let's jump
And
into
I'm not gonna
final.
lie. I'm not gonna lie. For some reason, I either identified or just cared a lot, or at least a bit more about the servant, because I was like, man,
Yep.
she's getting treated like shit.
Can I?
And then at the very end, like, all you have to do is apologize. You're like, fuck that, I'm out.
Yeah.
Can I also though like bring up the other servant, the old lady one who had the maracas? How that scene was so fucking tonally weird. Like oh, fourth mistress, it's your birthday. I'm gonna get you wine. Here's some wine. What's wrong, servant? You fucking killed a bitch. She's dead. Happy birthday, but you fucking killed a bitch. Like that was so weird to me. How suddenly just like that she's like fuck you killed somebody. Like you were just chill about giving her wine like 2 minutes ago.
Well, like that's a big part of Chinese philosophy. Like one of their big first like ideals was finding the right person for the job and treating your people well. You know, like community is important.
Yeah.
And so when you take someone and treat them that cruelly in the community.
But she must have known that she died, like before giving her the wine.
I'm sure that like the way that they wanted to set it up is like it's more like she heard the news from someone who brought something from the kitchen.
Gotcha.
You know?
I just thought that was so weird because she even gloated like, "Oh, I'm better than these young people. You know, the young people that I fucking outlived."
I did find that moment a little tonally off. There was something about it where I was like, the logic doesn't fully carry here. But I also just wanted to piggyback off of what Steve said about the Four Sisters May. Yeah, I feel like, and I'm curious now to see or to read the source material, how it if any it tries to take on the Four Sisters Maid's story, but it's like in the same way we enter this story through the fourth sister. I think nowadays where we do have TV and we do get to kind of enter through each character's perspective, there's a way that like entering the maid's perspective would just upend or not even upend, but just like add another degree of complexity to the situation, in which like if she's saying, well, the class system of like, if she's saying that she's a pawn in the system that she hates, it's like, but then still manages to find her footing over the maid, is just it. I kept thinking like, what's the backstory that we're not getting of her life pre this moment?
Well, I think that like a big factor is she does have that moment where she says, like, she intuits that she and the Masters had a relationship, and the Masters probably promised her a million times that she's going to be the next bride, that she's going to be part of the whole game. But then he brings this other one in, and not only that, but this woman is a commoner. She's not a lady. You know, like that first moment, the reason why that's so tense is because if she had been someone in the upper echelons of things, she would have never like washed her hands like that. You know, so from the get-go, like, not only did this man promise her a better life, but he brings someone else who essentially should have taken her role and gave her the life that he promised her. Like, that's what that whole tension's about.
I originally thought that when the lights were, the lanterns were lit in her room, that was for her. But then when I noticed the tape on the lanterns and all, I figured this is her like trying to project this life for herself. Like, even if it does come now, she's making this for herself to try and live as much. Yeah, she's trying to fantasize. You know, whether or not he ever ended up coming at that point.
100%.
That was the worst vision board in cinema history ever.
Yo, and I know this review is getting long, but like, can someone explain to me real quick the scene about the master sitting down and then the little boy telling him poems?
I think that's kind of just like how once upon a time in the 1800s we used to make kids do oration as a form of entertainment. It's a chance to be like, look at my wonderful smart son with his wonderful classic education. You know, he's a good heir.
Yeah.
I think it was also showing the connection between the father and caring about the son, and we never saw that with the daughter from the second sister.
100%.
Right? I think they were trying to show that there was a connection, that the father did care about that kid more than he cared about the other kid. That's how I read that.
Yeah.
How do you guys think the master was rich?
Does it matter?
Inheriting.
I don't think it really matters. I was just curious.
Oh,
Well, no, like I think JP's hit the nail on the head because they explained how many generations this has gone down.
Yeah.
You know, and like why these customs are like a big part of things. So you can infer that a lot of this guy's like weird kinks came from his father and how he treated his wives.
Yeah.
When people get power, they get lazy and they just hire people to invest for them. Probably that too, investing.
He was the creator of the orange chicken sauce.
He was into a polygamy coin, P-coin, polygamous coin.
Silk coin.
So one other thing,
Master coin. Oh.
One other thing is that I was saying before that I had read something about the actual original work, and they did say that there was something about that the master, like the first interaction between the master and the fourth sister, was very awkward, and it almost made it seem like he had spent some time with her in the book where they weren't having sexual relations. That it was very awkward. He would like make her face a wall and stuff like that. That there was some things that maybe he didn't want to have these for. Like maybe it was like he was pushed upon having this lifestyle. So it wasn't like his own choice by the way that the book was written. I was reading like a review of the book. That's where I got all that stuff from before about the suicide and all. So that makes it interesting too. Like what if the master is not there for the sexual element of all this? I mean, in the movie, it seemed much more like he was there every night. My man was there every single night.
Yeah.
Somebody's lantern was lit every night.
Except for like that one night that he was like out of town or whatever.
Right. And other than that, man, when he was home, somebody, you know, and who knows? I mean, it could have been massages and things like that as well. But
I kind of like how they never really expressed the sex like gratuitously in the movie.
That was so important to the story to me.
Yeah.
Because they could have went that route and they really didn't. You know, like you go that straight geisha, like somebody worshiping him. Dude, how about how they talked to him? Like how they were angry at him. And like I at some point I figured he would get like angry and physical just based on their relationship and the I was very surprised by that as well. That he never became like physical or like he was like, oh, you're mad at me? Oh, that's fine. You know, like that very much surprised me.
I think you're right, but I think he abused them in other ways where it's like, oh, okay, you're angry at me. I'm going to give the lantern to her tonight.
True.
Later, you know.
But I
that
was surprised
his...
that it never became like a physical thing, you know,
yeah.
Like only because you would think in that scenario that with all that dominance. But yeah, you're right. He did do it in other ways, like psychological.
So now I want to tell my friends, like, if you're ever going to make a booty call, just text a red lantern.
I think there's a red lantern emoji, actually.
I think so.
There is. See, that's a great inside thing for people to have. For like,
I don't think the red calls I make is when I butt dial.
You get the red emoji, and you know what time, or the lantern emoji, and you know what time it is.
Red light district, right? Like,
that's right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump into final thoughts, you guys. Let's just do it.
I thought it was an awesome pick, man. I thought it was an amazing pick. I thought I really, really enjoyed it. I think at some point in 1991, 92, whenever this came out, there was a bunch of people in China sitting in a room trying to figure out how to deal with this for a very long time. I think that the movie definitely came out at a really crucial, like a crucial time in Chinese history, like, you know, more modern Chinese history. But and I think it made me, once I realized when this came out, like when I heard about the band thing, I was like, it made me see this in a completely different way. I think it was an awesome pick, Jason. I'm glad you pushed it towards us, and I would recommend this. I wouldn't say to anyone, but to anyone that likes movies and anyone that is willing to, you know, open themselves up to culture. Because to me, like, definitely it was like a glimpse into something that I don't normally get to see.
Right on.
Yeah, no, like I'm excited to watch this film again. You know, because like I feel like it's one of those films where every time you watch it, you're going to learn something new. You're going to glean something else. You know, and I'm excited to see it again.
Yeah, for its simplicity, I think that it's kind of amazing how much you can gather from this movie just because of the artistic expression. Like it's so masterfully put together by so many different masters of their craft in film. You know, we talked about costumes, set design, cinematography, the lighting, you know, all these things, like the acting, directing, whatever, the right, you know, it's all there. And there's something to learn from each part of this. Who would I recommend this to? I would recommend this to anyone who is a straight up cinephile, anyone who absolutely loves film, anyone who loves international film, anyone who loves historic relevance and significance, anyone who wants to maybe learn more about Chinese history, even though it's not directly in the movie. There's a lot to glean from it. So that's who I would recommend it to. I will probably watch this again, like maybe not soon, but it's a part of my repertoire because I love it, and I'm gonna watch it again, if not just to learn from it, you know, because there's a lot to love in this thing, man. There's a lot to take from it, and there's a lot to like. I feel like this is a movie that has probably been watched in a lot of like cinema classes, but I feel like maybe even it might be one of those movies that was shown in like Chinese schools. You know what I mean? Like how there's a few American movies that kind of always get passed around schools. Maybe this might have been one of them. Definitely cinema schools for sure. So yeah, that's my final thought on the film.
I digged it. I'm definitely not cerebral enough to fully enjoy or grasp the movie.
No,
I
man.
definitely digged it. I would recommend this to every Latina aunt on the planet. Every single one of them. Because they need legit tragedy in the novellas that they absolutely obsess about. Like, real fucking tragedy. Because, like, at the end of the day, our protagonist was responsible for multiple deaths. You know, directly and indirectly. That was on her. And in a way, a form of suicide at the end. Isn't that terrible? Like, she has the choice because the master straight up said it's like people would want to be in your fucking shoes. You want to leave? You want to leave? I bet she did have that choice. I think she did. But nah, just the absolute fucking wreck that this movie landed on her had her just walking about in that end credit scene, which totally I did not expect. And I admire the movie for having the cojones to do so. And I want every Latino's aunt to bear witness and be slapped across the face by these cojones.
Oh my God. Well, there it is.
So, final thought. I want to say that in here, there's multiple films that could be made as well. I see a Quentin Tarantino version where the four sisters just kicking ass and just karate chopping people.
I'm just going to interject, but in that version, those feet would not have been washed.
That is true.
That's, yeah, for sure.
But the moment that I was like, yo, this four sister is kind of a B was when the servant came in and was next to her and she was like, what is that smell? Wash your hair. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I can't take this Kim Kardashian over here. But this movie was really incredible. It would never cross my radar if it wasn't for being here in the cinema club. And now even the tradition, I guess, started because look, Raymond texted me A Red Lantern.
I texted that to everybody.
Oh my god!
No, I don't feel special anymore. I was gonna say, do I go to LA or
I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that it existed. That's what I was trying to do.
Okay, and there you go, guys. You can start a tradition. I would recommend this movie to a lot of people. Man, this is a great movie also to just have in the background too. Like one of those movies that we talk like that can just be playing in the background. You don't have to pay attention to it necessarily, but just like every now and then you will look and you will see some amazing scenery or some beautiful clothing and things like that, or someone dying.
Yeah.
At the gay warehouse disco club that I will own when I'm wealthier and can invest in stuff. This will be one of those movies that plays along with the other movies that we always mention. The Woman Without a Face and whatnot. They're all going to be rotating. It's going to be the Cinema Club classics.
And we're gonna be in the background doing commentary,
right? Yeah.
This is definitely one of those movies where the cinematography is like beautiful enough that you sort of have to question it, and you just sort of stop and you stare at it for a minute, and you're like, "What is this movie?"
There's gonna be that.
I've been in a few establishments for sure where weird movies have been playing, and I'm like, "What is this?" So yeah, I agree, Raymond.
My final thought, if you're done with yours, Steve, is if you want to be a film director and don't want to pay a shit ton of tuition or didn't get a full ride to a film school, this should be one of the films that you watch and just see what like great choices are made throughout this film, throughout every department. Because I do think it's a beautiful film, and I think after talking about it with y'all, I am a lot more excited to like watch it again, maybe with a group, and just see what else I notice. And while we've been talking, I mentioned in our little chat that I got the hardcover source material because I want to see what exactly the adaptation did in terms of story choices.
I'm inspired by that same choice, Raymond, and I'm going to do the same. I actually do want to read this book now. I didn't know it was a book, so thank you guys for that.
I'm just gonna have a screenshot PDF file printed on like crumpled up paper with legal stuff on the back.
Yo, I work in a bookstore. Like, guys.
Are you suggesting we should come in and buy the book from you?
I mean, you'll get a discount.
Okay. Well, let us know if the book exists in your shop.
Well, I'm probably gonna have to order it just because it's older. But yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, if it is, I'll swing by and pick up a cop.
The club became a book club accidentally.
Comment down below to get your Michaela discount today.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Raymond, you really screwed up this time.
I mean, if you made it this far, you might as well get a discount.
Well, thank you guys for like watching this movie with me. I've always wanted to watch this with a crew of people because I've had no clue what anybody else in the world really thought about it. It's just something that kind of impacted me like early on in my film journey. So very grateful to have you guys and to share it with this particular group. And I do have a question for you, Steve. What do you got for us next week?
Love it. Love to see it. But even more, love to hear it.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. I don't know why you asked me. I don't know why you asked me because it's not my turn. It's someone that looks like me, though. He's over there laughing. It's Raymond.
So we will be watching But I'm a Cheerleader, directed by Jamie Babbitt, question mark on how to say her name. Screenplay by Brian Wayne Peterson. And it was released in 1999. And that's all I'll tell you. I'm really excited. I've never seen it, but it's an often referenced film. And that's all.
Awesome.
There he goes. But I'm a cheerleader. It's next week's film. So for Raymond, Arturo Perez, the Sixth Mistress, aka Chris, Miguel and JP, Jason Eccles, and me, Steve Dusty. We'll catch you next week. Bye bye.
Hi, I'm JP Serno, and welcome. Hi, I'm JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Hi, I'm JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Fucking shit. Okay. Hey, I'm JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Right?
Whole time,
Jesus
not even a
Christ.
flow.
And as soon as it's the third one, because this is the third one, right? I am JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Oye Dimelo. Super cut of every time I fuck it up. Hey, I'm JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo. Hey, I'm JP Serno, and thank you for watching Oye Dimelo Network. And click here for additional videos, and don't forget to subscribe. The lonely singles in your neighborhood already did.